Hey, buddy, watch this.
Hello, Regis Kilbin is the name, and Heroes of the Storm is the game. And today I'm going to be taking another look at Greymane. I've got another fun Greymane build to propose. I've been having some fun with it. I think it's pretty strong. This is one that I am calling the Blunderbuss Greymane. If you don't know, Greymane has two modes. He has a human form where he uses a gun and attacks from range. You can see the gun there. And as well as, of course, his Worgen form where he turns into a wolf and attacks at melee range. But sometimes in some engagements, the wolf or Worgen form can actually be pretty challenging to play as. If the enemy team has a lot of burst damage or stun locks, if you get that close and get in the middle of a fight, they'll just stun lock you and burn you down because you don't really have any self-sustain or reliable escapes depending upon your talent build. So occasionally, depending on your own team composition or the enemy team composition, you might have to play Greymane as more of a ranged-based character. Think of more like a Rainer than a Kerrigan. So this build gives you that alternative for those situations where you're kind of scared to go into Worgen form. But you'll have to commit pretty early because this build does rely on some early game talents and a very narrow path in order to work well. So the Blunderbuss Greymane, you'll be attacking from range. You can still pump out a ton of damage. You have some cool escapes. And you occasionally have hard engages to finish off fleeing enemies. So it's pretty fun and still quite consistent and powerful, and probably a little safer for beginners to Greymane or people who aren't quite as good in those key, intense moments that melee assassins sometimes require. So real quickly, let's run through the build. Level 1, Perfect Aim. Then Draft Overflow. Incendiary Elixir, Marked for the Kill, On the Prowl, Concentrated Blast, and finally Hunter's Blunderbuss. You'll notice the word blunderbuss there. I stole for the name of this build. So up first, Perfect Aim. This increases Gilnean Cocktail's range and refunds mana against heroes. So Gilnean Cocktail, of course, is your Q attack. You'll see we have quite a few buffs there to our Q. It is pretty fundamental to this build along with basic attacks. Since your E can get you into trouble, you'll be relying on Q and W primarily with this build, and your E will be reserved for pretty big or key moments, but not something you want to be in all the time. So anyway, back to Perfect Aim. This increases Gilnean Cocktail's range by 30% and refunds 60 mana if it hits an enemy hero. So you'll notice that Gilnean Cocktail costs 80 mana, Inner Beast costs 70 mana. So the two primary abilities with this build that you're going to be casting, you want your W up as much as possible, right? And you're going to be using your Q as often as possible because you saw how amazing it was. So we've already got all the talents in, but we absolutely shredded that minion wave. It does a lot of damage. So anyway, they're both somewhat expensive. You'll burn 150 mana every time you use both of these, which should be at the beginning of every fight. And you only have 700. So the mana refund, which I don't usually love mana refunds, it's actually not too bad in this build. It makes it easier to stay full and make sure that you can cast that Q exactly when you need to. But also the range on Gilnean Cocktail is pretty great because you want to be able to poke consistently with this build and stand far away and still hit people. So you can see how long the line is here. We can hit stuff from really far away because not only is it at the end of the arrow, but it actually splashes backwards from there. So even from all the way back here, see, we'll still be able to hit the forts, and you can probably even step to about right here, yeah, and still make contact with 3 forts. So you can see how crazy that is. Even if they've got a strong front line and you're trying to hit like a Sergeant Hammer or Tyrande or Morales or something back there, you can still connect with people who are crazy far away thanks to Perfect Aim. And with Inner Beast active, we'll just do tons of damage. We're hitting for 817 damage from this far away, this safely. It's scary, right? This build has lots of potential if you play it well. So moving on to level 4, we got a Draft Overflow. This increases Gilnean Cocktail's explosion length by 35%. So of course you will already seeing that in action since we do have all the talents already. That's why we're able to hit stuff that's so far away. But these two talents in combination, you can really poke people down and do some crazy stuff. That's also important though, because even if a target is at close range and the explosion procs really close to you, which sometimes you'll have to do, right? If there's an Arthas right in your face, and you still have to hit the stuff behind him, that the explosion length will allow you to do that, which your level 1 talent wouldn't, right? It doesn't increase the explosion length, so you'd only be hitting this minion instead of, say, minions back here as well. So that's an important distinction to take note of with those two talents. Moving on to level 7, we've got Incendiary Elixir. Gilnean Cocktail deals 200% more damage to the enemy it impacts and explodes even if it misses. So both of those are insanely good upgrades. 200% extra damage is pretty fantastic because the front half of Gilnean Cocktail doesn't do a lot on its own. It only does 151. So you'll note that it should be doing far more than that, and it does. On the first hit, actually I think that has to be a hero, so let me show you that on Arthas. My mistake. So let's hit Arthas with our cocktail here. Yeah, so we still hit for quite a bit there. But also it explodes even if you don't hit anything, so that's great in two regards. Even if there's nothing for you to hit up close and you still want to poke those backline squishies, you can do so, it'll still explode. And that's another important distinction and another huge upgrade to your Gilnean Cocktail. At a base level, Gilnean Cocktail is actually kind of hard to use. I didn't actually know we could see this, but you can get a pretty good look there at the tooltip range on the ability. So look how big and wide and significant that damage spread is, right? It's just chaotic for enemy teams to have to deal with that every 9 seconds. 9 seconds isn't even that long of a cooldown, so it's scary. Big time area of effect poke from an extremely safe distance. I like it. Moving on to our heroics. I don't necessarily think that either heroic for this build is perfectly suited to what it's trying to accomplish, but certainly Mark for the Kill is a little bit better. This allows you to mark a target and they become vulnerable, taking an extra 25% damage. So it's kind of like Tyranda's Hunter's Mark on a much longer cooldown, so it's not as good, and that's probably one of the reasons Tyrande is such an overpowered hero right now. But it's still important, and in key moments it can do a lot. Plus, if you mark that target, you can, of course, jump to them, which I don't always recommend with this build because you won't have ways to get out necessarily. But if you do need to finish somebody off, and you are allowed, of course, to use your Worgen form in this build, it's just not something you're going to rely on. This definitely allows you to do that. So even if you need to jump in quickly and just do a little bit of that damage or move yourself around the battlefield, you can do so and then jump right back out with your E. There you go. So it's just a little extra tool, and it's less committal than Go for the Throat can be from time to time. And it offers a passive advantage, even if you never choose to reactivate it. We missed, but even if you never choose to reactivate it, Arthas, get in vision. You can still just rely on that vulnerability to give your team an advantage from far away. So it's less committal than Go for the Throat, and still offers a passive advantage in secondary occasions. Moving on to level 13, we have On the Prowl. Inner Beast increases your movement speed once it has been active for 3 seconds. So, Inner Beast is our W, and it has the timer, of course. So you have to continue attacking and maintain your combo in order to keep Inner Beast active, which can be hard to do sometimes in Worgen form just because you're committing so hard to your range. But when you're relying on ranged auto attacks, you can actually stay in Inner Beast for quite a while and continually just reset that cooldown without committing too hard. So that means that half the time, you'll see I'm moving quickly. I have the little air blowing past me. I've got that 30% movement speed. So it also gives you, after the last time you attack, you essentially get 3 seconds of almost mounted movement speed, you know? So it's significant for escaping. It allows you to chase people down if they're running away, so you can actually stutter step more reliably on a target that's fleeing and maintain your ground and finish them off exactly like that. So On the Prowl just gives you some offensive capability, some defensive capability, and the other talents in this tier don't really support the goal with this build because they're more focused on Razor Swipe, which is a Worgen talent, Worgen ability, and we don't really care about our Worgen stuff too much in this build. Next, at level 16, we're going to take a look at Concentrated Blast. This increases Greymane Cocktail's damage by 80% while Inner Beast is active. So as I just mentioned, it's not too hard to keep Inner Beast active for the important moments when you're in human form most of the time, because you're constantly going to be attacking and poking from afar. So you should be keeping that active, and while it's active, look how hard that Greymane Cocktail hits. 817 in a huge swath at level 20. So as I mentioned, these two abilities are your absolute go-to key things for this build, and when you use them together you get crazy big time results, like 817 damage in that huge area you'll see there in the triangle in the bottom right hand corner. So everybody in that circle is going to be taking 817 damage if you do it correctly. And then finally at level 20 is the talent that gives this this build its name, even though it's not necessarily core to the build. It's Hunter's Blunderbuss. Your human basic attack splash for 100% damage behind the target. This is another thing that just makes you so good at poking and doing a lot of damage, not just a little bit of damage, but actually a lot of damage to multiple targets from reasonably far away. So you'll note that when I hit this minion in the front, a lot of stuff behind him is taking 300 damage. So actually mostly hitting Arthas, but it's still it will hit an entire minion wave if you line it up well, and sometimes multiple enemy heroes, just allowing you to poke that much better. Now the auto attack range on Greymane is not super far away, so you'll note that it's not quite as safe as something like a Rainer. And if you find that you're constantly having to stand too close, even in human form, you might consider swapping out Incendiary Elixir for Quicksilver Bullets. I think that's a totally reasonable change. Having the extra basic attack range works pretty well with on the prowl, because you can just stay farther away and more constantly and consistently keep your Inner Beast buff going without overcommitting. So I think that's reasonable, but man, Incendiary Elixir is so good at poke. Just no matter what you hit, whether you miss or you don't, whether there's a primary target or not, you can still get all that damage. So I tend to lean towards Incendiary Elixir, but I certainly understand anyone who wants to play with Quicksilver Bullets as well. So there you have it. That sums up my Blunderbuss Greymane build. If you are scared of the Worgen form in any given game, or maybe just as a playstyle in general, you don't want to commit that hard, but you still want to play some Greymane and still succeed, this build gives you a very viable alternative that's great in certain situations. Still allows you to pump out tons of damage, and in key moments you of course can still use your Worgen form and your heroic to go in and get that kill. So I hope you have fun playing this build. I know I certainly have. Good luck out there on the ranked ladder. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, game on.